Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to the Bold Moves podcast. I am the host, Mandy Mucci, and this is episode number 61. Today, I chatted with someone who it was kind of unbelievable how many crazy things we had in common, but one thing we do not have in common is our profession. We are both freelancers, but she is a writer and course creator and used to be a school teacher just like I was, and had a really interesting journey from school teacher to where she is today, and has a lot of exciting things ahead of her as well. So without further ado, I hope you really enjoy the story of Laura Pennington. And if you are inspired to potentially be a freelance writer, this is a great episode for you. All right, here she is, Laura Pennington. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Bold Moves podcast. I am with another fellow podcaster, Laura Pennington. Good morning. How's it going?
Hey, it's going well. Happy to be here.
Welcome to the show. I'm so glad that you're here too. Now, of course, you know that the name of the podcast is Bold Moves. So I would love to hear why you think you're on here. What are the bold moves you've made?
Oh boy, I've made a couple. In fact, I'm just now celebrating it being, I've been in business for 5 years, but that's also 5 years since I resigned from my job and totally started over. So that's definitely probably part of the bold moves. And I know my fiance is in the military, so we move all the time, which having a business and moving and having somebody else who has a career that's also a lifestyle is a little bit of a challenge too. So there could be many reasons.
Yeah, I found that definitely a lot of people who end up on this show, it's usually not just one bold move that people make. People are usually bold movers in several areas of life and serial bold movers. So
right. I like that.
All right. So let's go, I guess, to the first one that you mentioned was with your career. First of all, happy 5-year anniversary. That's super exciting. But what were you doing before and what are you doing now? How did you make that leap?
I used to teach middle school in Baltimore City, and it's one of the highest need struggling school systems in America, profiled in The Wire for a reason, because they have a very high need for teachers there. So I went in with a program a lot like Teach for America. Okay. To basically, I had 6 weeks of training to become a teacher. It was not enough. I'll just say that. So I stepped into the classroom after a summer of teaching high school, summer school, and it was just chaotic. I had wanted to be an educator. I wanted to become a professor. I had my master's at the time and was working on my PhD at night, but that whole experience just burned the desire for education right out of me. So I resigned almost towards the end of the school year. I resigned from that job and was very lucky that I had another boss who'd worked with me before then who offered me a different position in their company. So I went and worked there for a while. So that was in 2012. And right after this, I also discovered freelance writing. I Googled how to become a freelance writer. I needed extra money. I figured I could teach myself. And it grew very quickly. I wasn't expecting it to be a full-time career. So it kind of exploded, and I've been doing it full-time since the summer of 2013.
Wow, that's awesome. So we have something in common, and that is both of us have experience being a middle school teacher in the worst school districts in the country. I remember, how long did you teach? Was it just one school year?
1 year. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I got a degree in education, and I'll never forget. I taught for 6 years in Milwaukee, and I'll never forget one of the days they had us all meet together for professional development. And at the very beginning, they're showing us these graphs about how Milwaukee is in the bottom 3 of the major school districts in the country, just behind Detroit and Cleveland, and showing us all the test scores, all these statistics where we're bottom. And they're like, but you can make a difference. I'm like, oh, we need to work on your pep talks.
Yeah, and good for you for making it 6 years, because there's no way, okay, I could have done it. So I have a lot of respect for you with that.
Well, I had more than 6 weeks of preparation.
Probably helped.
Maybe a little bit, although I've often said that I'm not sure how much the preparation actually prepares you for what you actually are doing. So I think a lot of my preparation was for teaching in, some unicorn cloud where
Right. That doesn't exist. Maybe
Yeah.
it does, but I haven't seen it yet.
Exactly. So what was the job that you had in between the teaching and your full-time freelance writing? And then what did you do before you were a teacher?
Oh, so I graduated with my master's in political science in 2010. I'd worked in the political science department as a recitation lecturer, and I loved it. That kind of encouraged my entering a career in education when I finished that. But we moved from Virginia to Maryland because of the military. And so it was very expensive. So I had to find a job while I was working on my PhD. So I applied and applied and applied, and it was such a frustrating process. I was told I was overqualified at almost every job interview. And finally, a company that sold insurance products and helped brokers or helped agents sell life insurance and disability insurance took a chance on me. I answered the phones at an insurance agency with a master's degree, and that was a blow. I was making no money. It was exhausting. Wasn't using my brain at all. I could be on autopilot there. But it was when I was there, that's when I applied to enter the Baltimore City teaching residency. And then I was accepted. And so I quit that job in an insurance agency, taught for a year. And then right before I had quit, my old boss, even though I quit, she reached out to me and she's like, we have another position in the company. We'd really love to offer it to you. We'll wait for you till the end of the school year. And then kind of events escalated in Baltimore to the point where I could not stay. I had to leave. So they actually took me a little bit early. And then I was selling annuities and long-term care insurance and helping agents, run their businesses more effectively and running quotes for them all day long. So I wouldn't say it was my life's passion, but it wasn't a bad job, right? It was way better than Baltimore. So
was this around the time that there was political unrest and riots and stuff going on in Baltimore, or was this before? I don't remember the timeline of that.
It was right before all this had really happened. And like for me, like the students, it was one of the reasons that I left was because it was so dangerous. I was actually very lucky. I mean, there were colleagues who'd been physically attacked and had their cars stolen and totaled and bombs thrown through the window. I was very lucky that I was never the victim of any of that.
Sure.
But the administration was just awful. I mean, I could handle the kids. They were what I would expect from 12-year-olds. But the adults, I'm like, y'all act younger and worse than the kids sometimes.
Yeah.
And it was just, there was no support. I was hired and they said, I was hired to teach 7th grade. It was supposed to be geography. On the day I was hired, the principal said, we can't afford a 6th or an 8th grade teacher. You're the only social studies teacher between 5th grade and high school. So teach them what you think they need to know. I had no books, no computer, no overhead projector. I had to buy my own chalk, pencils for my students. So it was a tremendous amount of pressure. I mean, the first year of teaching is the worst, but to have nothing and to have no background in it, you feel like you're being thrown to the wolves for sure.
Absolutely. That's definitely, I can see why I lasted longer than you did. We'll put it that way. Okay. One thing I have to know, because I still occasionally have teaching nightmares. Do you? Because I feel like almost PTSD, not to throw that term around lightly, but I've definitely woken up like in a cold sweat thinking I had to go back to teaching for some reason, or remembering a vivid memory of something crazy that happened.
Yes, absolutely. And for a while, I had never seen the television show The Wire. And my mom said, don't watch it. Like, you can't handle it. It's going to be too real. So I only watched The Wire a year ago. I mean, it's been out of production for years and years, but there's a whole season about Baltimore City public schools. And when I watched it, my mouth was hanging open. I was like, this person has worked in this school system. There's way too much going on here that was real. So even that, I mean, it took me a while to heal to the point where I was like, okay, remember, you're not there anymore. But I absolutely have those nightmares. Being in my classroom, not having materials, an angry parent, the principal screaming at me, all those kinds of things where I do feel back there. So, and I wouldn't go, we still lived in Maryland, but I would not go into the city of Baltimore for a year after I quit there. It was too much. So I just stayed out.
I've been to Baltimore once and I really liked it and thought it was a cool city, but I can imagine needing some time away after your
Yes.
experience.
It has some beautiful areas and some great things, and it's got all the potential for tourism, but you'll be driving through Baltimore, beautiful old homes, and the next block, it's scary. It's not a good neighborhood at all. And it's really unfortunate because there's so much potential there.
Right. We saw some really beautiful like Gothic churches and it was really cool, but I could definitely see where there were times we were on foot mostly and we'd walk and it'd be like, we're 3 girls. Should we be walking alone at night here? Maybe not. We'll just
no.
Okay, so let's flip to a more positive. Now that we've kind of told a couple war stories, now you are a freelance writer. I know you have a podcast. What are some of the favorite things about what you're doing today?
Oh my gosh. First of all, I love that it's something different every single day. I write a lot about the same things. I work mostly for attorneys, but I'm always on the cutting edge of information that's probably useless outside this industry or Jeopardy. But I know a lot about estate planning and car accidents and traumatic brain injury studies. And I'm always educating myself about that stuff to write about it for my clients. And I think it's pretty cool to be learning something new every single day. So I love that. I would definitely say the flexibility. So I'm writing my dissertation right now. I have a whole other piece to my business of developing courses for people to be able to divide up my day to focus on different things rather than just saying, oh, I have a job that I have to do 9 to 5 every single day, or in the teaching world, 6 a.m. until 7 p.m.
You pass out.
Yeah, exactly. So I love that a lot. And then, like I said, we move often. So the fact that my career travels with me wherever we go, I think that's a pretty common challenge for people in the military. Like once the spouse or significant other gets a career, people have even been asking my fiance at work, like, is she coming with you? And he's like, well, of course she's coming with me because I just need a laptop and Wi-Fi. But it's a hard time for families where someone is ingrained in the local community and then you're being uprooted every year or two for the military.
Absolutely. So are you still on the East Coast now?
We are on the East Coast and we are moving in 3 weeks to the Midwest, which we are both bummed about. We both grew up in the Midwest. We feel like we've been there and done that, but it's okay. It's part of the life. So we got to take it as an adventure.
Sure. Where in the Midwest are you headed and where are you from?
So I grew up in Ohio. My fiance grew up in Pennsylvania and we're moving to Indiana. Bet you didn't even know there was a Navy base in landlocked Indiana, but there is.
That doesn't make sense to me, but I believe you.
he thought it was a joke. It's a very small base in the middle of nowhere. So it's a good position for him. So we're going to go, but we were kind of moving south, right? Like we were Maryland, North Carolina. I was like, all right, Florida's going to work out that way.
Maybe next time.
Yeah.
So one thing that I found interesting about what you said, about what you do as a writer, is that it seems like you've found a pretty specific niche. How did you end up in that niche? Is that the same thing you're writing your dissertation on so that they kind of can overlap? Or is it by chance that this is what you write about? Or how does that work?
They definitely overlap a little bit. So my dissertation is about domestic violence victims and their experience fighting for custody. So I've always been interested in the law, and that's always been, part of the connection. I do write for some family lawyers, so I know a lot about that particular thing. But actually, the reason that I got into writing for legal, in college, I worked for a personal injury and workers' comp lawyer. My last year of college, I helped prepare her materials before she'd go before the workers' comp board to argue for more benefits for her client. And I just thought it was very interesting, the work that she was doing and the impact that it had on her client's life, whether she was able to get benefits for somebody who was fully disabled or not. And so I realized there was a huge demand for that. And not a lot of people wanted to write about legal things or understood, there's certain things attorneys can and cannot do. And you have to be very mindful of that when you're ghostwriting for them. So for me, it was a great fit with my background and my interests, but also because I'm very sensitive to how whatever I write comes across for them too.
That makes sense. Can you tell me a little bit more about the rules regarding what lawyers can and can't do? Because I've encountered that randomly in different parts of my life, and I've always found it really fascinating. So kind of what guidelines do you have to follow?
Yeah, and it's different for every state too. So some state bars are extremely limited about what you can do. Even court reporters, there's like specific rules about what court reporters can say they do. So the whole legal industry is like this. But for example, a general rule is no lawyer can say they are the best, right? You really just should not say, I'm the best car accident lawyer in Philadelphia. You also cannot say, we guarantee you'll get results. You cannot promise results. And anything that comes across, it's such a fine line with blogging because in some cases they're not really allowed to advertise. So you can't say things like, you have to like mention their services, but do it in a very sly way. Like you can't really come out and say, call us today, but you can say, you could benefit if you had a personal injury lawyer working on your case. So it's like, there's a lot of little nuances and things that really feed into that because they don't want to get flags from the state bar on ethics violations or whatever. So that's one of the reasons that legal has been such a great niche for me and why my attorneys like working with me, because I understand the environment they're operating in.
That is completely reasonable. I can definitely see where you would have issues if you constantly had to remind your writer that they're breaking the law or going to get you in trouble somehow.
Exactly.
If you ever want a place where there's definitely no problem with advertising, I can tell you that Wisconsin has personal injury lawyer commercials and like call us now stuff every minute.
And it's so different, right? Like that's what's so crazy. Like if you hire, like if I have clients in 2 different states, I have to make sure I know what they can and can't do or what the actual laws in the state are, because a DUI in one state is not the same as the penalties for a DUI in another. So that's why a lot of people stay away from legal, because they're like, well, if I'm writing about gardening or parenting, those are standard topics across the board. It's not the same when you're talking about the law. So it makes for a little bit of extra work.
I can definitely see that. Yeah, in Milwaukee, one of the local celebrities is actually a personal injury lawyer. And I'm sure everyone who's listening from Milwaukee is thinking of this guy and knows his phone number.
Yes.
It's just that hardcore with the advertising.
And they do like such funky, there was one in Ohio that my mom still makes fun of. She still lives there and she's like, whatever you do, don't market like that company. Like the guy got like a really bad toupee and it's like just cheesy commercial. So I think that's kind of a standard. When they do advertise, it's like you're sick of hearing their name, right?
Absolutely. So with your niche, do you try to stay within that, or so that you can have consistency and to kind of make things easier for yourself? Or do you like variety so that, you don't get bored each day?
It's a really careful mix. I would say about 80 to 85% of my clients fall into that legal realm. And I get requests to do all kinds of different stuff. And it just depends. I mean, I find that the more legal I do, the more knowledgeable I am about it, the faster I am, the better it serves my clients, because I'm very aware of what's happening in their industry, new rules and laws and studies and things like that. But I also do take on projects that are outside that scope because I do want that variety.
That makes sense. What would be, do you follow a schedule every day for yourself, or do you kind of just follow your cravings as far as what you feel like doing? Obviously, aside from any deadlines you might have, how does a typical day look like for you if there is one?
Oh my gosh. I'm trying to get more into a regular schedule, but that's so hard for me because I'm just resistant to that from working in corporate America. I just like, I don't want that regular schedule thing. But what I do is I track my time based on my different projects. So like I have a specific number of hours every week allotted for my dissertation, my personal projects, my client work. And then I am constantly revising that schedule, but I usually sit down on Sunday and say how many blocks. I usually work in 50-minute blocks.
Okay.
And do like 3 to 4 of those a day, and they're really focused blocks. And then I will plan out my week as far as what I can fit in there. And if I have less client work, I'll put in more course creation stuff or working on something else type of a thing. But I'm an early riser. That's probably the only thing that's consistent about my schedule. I'm one of those crazy people that gets up at 4:00 in the morning. And I usually work from like 4 to 5. I do like emails, clear my schedule and stuff. Then I work for a couple of hours, take a break, work for another couple hours. And then in the afternoon, I have a standing appointment outside the house to kind of force me to leave. So I'm usually done by like 2:00 every day.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I can see that. I see you're still a little bit in the middle school teacher schedule with your 50-minute blocks. Do you have a bell?
I do. And, I originally was like, I'm so not going to do that. But then I did all this research about the Pomodoro Technique and now doing 2 of those blocks and then taking a 10-minute break. It really works. And then I use a music tool that has a timer. It's like music that scientifically helps you focus. So I'm kind of amplifying the power of those 50-minute blocks, but it does work. So yeah, I get a little bit of that's rolled over.
That's awesome. Is that an app that you use?
Yeah, it's called Focus at Will, and they've got a bunch of different channels you can listen to. And because I always listen to the same channel, I've really trained my brain that I know pretty much all the songs on that channel, but they never get old or annoy me. So it's like telling my brain, oh, we're sitting in this chair, these lights are on, the headphones are on, this music is playing, it's time to work. And it's just an extra way to kind of force me to get moving.
Absolutely. And I know for me, if I batch tasks, I get in a zone and it goes more quickly. So it sounds like you're really setting yourself up for success in that way, both with sticking primarily to your niche and being able to get in that mindset zone, as well as how you set up your workday.
Yeah. I mean, we all have a limited number of hours in the day. So I'm trying to make the most of the ones that I'm working. I don't want to be frazzled and all over the place and jumping in and out of my email box. So I think it's really it sounds counterintuitive to say, oh, I'm going to work for 3 or 4 focused 50-minute blocks, but you can get a lot done in that time if you're not being distracted by your phone or your email inbox or whatever.
Absolutely. One of my favorite things, I do a lot of personal development, and there is a talk that Zig Ziglar did probably 50 years ago or something, but he talks about how much more productive you are the last day before you go on vacation. Yes. And if you're able to harness that productivity on a normal work day, probably just as you're doing, you get all of the important stuff done. You don't screw around and waste time, and you can do a full day's worth of work in, a couple of hours if you're like, this is what needs to be done immediately.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing? We went on vacation for 3 weeks last year and we were in Europe and on a cruise ship for part of it. So totally disconnected. I could not do any work and I panicked. I'm like, there's no way this is going to work. And then the 10 days before we left, I did the full month's worth of work. And I went, wait a second. It took me 10 days. And they were stressful, long days. But are you kidding me that I did an entire month's worth of work? I'm like, I am working too slow on a regular basis. And that's when I really started gamifying it. That's why I track how much time I spend on everything, because I'm trying to stay under that weekly limit, because it's just like you said, when we're pushed, we can do a lot more and a lot more quickly.
I love that. So on that note, how do you bill your clients? Because it seems like an hourly rate would not be fair to you, since your hour doesn't include scrolling through Facebook, checking your email 5 times, getting up, sitting down, going to the door.
Yes, exactly. I try to have almost all my clients be on a retainer blogging package. So they need a certain number of blogs per week. And then if I have a client that so a lot of them leave the title selection and the posting up to me, so I can work in advance. For those clients that don't do that, I give them a month's notice. Hey, the last day you can order something is XYZ. If you want to front load it and give me more, do it now. That kind of encourages them to be ahead of the curve too and make things easier for them. So I will usually just do kind of a bunch of work in advance and then disconnect completely. But I'm always trying to stay at least a couple days ahead now. Last week, I was able to plan 2 of my clients, all their blog posts for the week. And that was huge. That saved me a number of hours this week.
That's awesome. So do you plan on doing this forever, or do you plan on using your PhD once you get it? How does that work? Because I don't know, it sounds like you started this when you were planning on a corporate employment and now you're kind of just, I don't know, maybe for me, I started my master's degree while I was still teaching, and all I have left is my final project. And I don't plan on ever using my master's degree, but I feel like I should still get it. So I don't know if you're in a similar situation or.
Yeah, you're speaking my language exactly, because I've done everything but the dissertation, all the qualifying exams, everything. And my data is even collected. Like 80% of my data is collected. I'm coding it right now. And my advisor's like, Laura, you cannot quit now. Like literally you have a few hurdles left and you've jumped over the rest of them. But there's no connection to like PhD land and my life outside of that. And like you said, the motivation, it's like, what am I going to do with this when I'm done?
How badly do I want to hang this on my wall?
And my fiance is a medical doctor, and he's always teasing me. He's like, join the club. You can call yourself doctor. He's like teasing me like, you need to become one of us. And I'm like, I know, but what is the point? Like, I mean, I care about my research a lot. That's really the only reason I'm finishing. It's a personal goal, but I do not intend to enter academia at all. I mean, I have so much more control over my schedule. I make more money than I could make doing that. So there's it's hard. It's really hard to finish when you don't have that connection. But I'm not sure that I will be a freelance writer forever. I'm trying to transition into doing more nonfiction and fiction writing under my own name in the next couple of years. And, I'm selling more and more courses, teaching other people kind of how to build a business like this. So I'm hoping I have more of that income in the future. And that's a bigger portion of my business for sure.
That's really cool. On the same note, my fiance is a doctor of physical therapy, and I'm 5 years older than him. So when we met was right before he got his doctorate degree. And I'm like, what the heck? He's 23 and he has his doctorate. And I was still teaching, and I'm like, I'm almost done with my master's. I just need it too, so we can be doctors together. So but same thing. I'm like, well, it's going to hang on my wall and I'm not going to use it. So maybe someday if I get,
it's so hard to find that connection, but I have to believe that there's some benefit to it. Like there's no way I did all this work and it will never open any other door. It's just, I don't know what that door is. It's not going to be an academic job. I don't think I would fit into the traditional professor thing anyways. And now I'm probably spoiled by 5 years of working for myself.
It's so hard. I've been working for myself for 5 to 6 years too, and I'm such a brat whenever someone tells me what to do or there's some sort of timer. I'm like, well, I was going to do that anyway, but don't tell me to do it.
Yeah, don't micromanage me. I know what I'm doing.
Too funny. So it sounds like you're kind of about to be in a transitional phase, which is really cool. If you don't know the answer to the next question, no shame, totally cool. But I'm wondering if you know your purpose, and if you do, if you could share what your purpose is.
Oh, I think for a while it's been to write. I mean, that's just my wheelhouse is words, but I just don't know what direction that's going to take. Like I've obviously made it work writing for other people. There's something about the transition from being a ghostwriter to putting my own name on it that's a little bit scary. Even though I've definitely had plenty of experience, it's still a scary thing. And then more and more, like, even though I'm a writer and I'm normally like a behind the scenes introvert type person, I've been doing a lot of speaking, presenting at conferences. So I don't know like how that's going to fit in, if it fits in at all, but I definitely know that it's something to do with words, either spoken or written words, to help other people. I mean, it sounds so broad, but like that's all I know of it at this point.
You're further along than a lot of people still. So, no shame, like I said, but that's cool. I like how, I mean, it's broad, but it's also specific. At least you have a couple things narrowed down about it. So you mentioned obviously that, putting your own name on things is on the scarier side. Since we're talking about bold moves, what's the scariest thing you've ever done?
Oh my gosh, goodness. I have to think about this. Well, I mean, when I was in college, I went to college. I went to an all-girls school, which is kind of, I guess, is super rare these days, but I knew I wanted to go to that particular school. Only 700 students, all girls, very small, in the middle of nowhere, Virginia. So I moved geographically there, but I went there because they had a study abroad program in England. They owned houses there. And so I was one of the students selected to go there. So I moved to England for 10 months, didn't know anybody, didn't know my roommate, didn't know how I was going to make it work financially. And I just figured I'll work this out somehow. And it ended up being a complete blast. And that's actually where we went last year on vacation. We went back to England to kind of re-walk through all that stuff and everything. So it was a bold move, but it was a fun one too.
That's awesome. So when you're feeling that kind of fear about to move across the ocean to another continent, how do you push past fear, both in that situation, or if you're going to publish something with your name on it, or any general situation where you're doing something scary that, you just got to push through? How do you do it?
I have to kind of hack my own brain because obviously the dissertation is such a great example of this. If there's no deadline, it's never going to get done. I'm awesome on a deadline, right? I always deliver work for my clients, but if there's no deadline, it's never going to finish. So like I have a personal trainer I hated running when I started working with her. I was like, this is the worst thing ever. Exercise. I never want to do this. And she's like, all right, we're going to make you run a 5K and we're going to sign you up for a race and you're going to run the 5K because you're going to show up when there's a deadline to it. So sometimes I have to push myself with it in that direction. I have to have an accountability partner. I have a dissertation coach who checks on me every week to see the progress I'm making. Those kinds of things help push me in the right direction. And I've been thinking about finding some way to incorporate that in with the writing to where there's a, deadline. One of my favorite writers said she never would have finished her first 2 books if she hadn't sold them on proposal. So I thought, well, maybe I should try to sell one of these books on proposal. And then there's a firm deadline and I won't let down somebody else the way I might let down
yourself. It's sad, but it's so true. I'm the same way.
Yeah. It's just so hard. And, sometimes you just have to just do it and it's scary. But you just have to figure out what your weaknesses are and how you can kind of overcome that or trick your brain into doing it.
I love that. How would you trick your brain? Because you started it with the hack your brain. So I'm curious, is that just tell yourself there's a deadline or?
That never works for me. I was
going to say, it doesn't work for me either. So that's why I want to know.
I have to involve another person. So one of the things I came across, so first of all, I have a friend who published, her first young adult book is coming out. Her second one was just purchased. So I keep in touch with her every so often just to kind of hear how her journey's going. Cause it kind of propels me she is a full-time teacher herself. And I'm like, man, if she's doing this with a teaching job, there's no excuse. Right.
Right.
So things like that. And then I've encountered, I actually ran into a literary agent a couple months ago by chance. And she actually has a program where she will do monthly coaching with you to push you in the right direction and get your book in proposal stage. So I've thought about doing something like that. I mean, I totally recognize that's what I needed with my dissertation because it's an open-ended project. And so I hired a guy who's coached 30 other people to the finish line. And I said, this is my deadline, 18 months. If we're not done, then I'm out. And so he's like, all right, I'm gonna every week and kind of see how that progress is going. So that or else I try to gamify things a lot. So I will have a challenge. I had a challenge for the first quarter, how many steps and miles I was going to run to get ready, for the 5K mode and stuff like that, or how many words I'm going to write every single day. And I cannot stop, even if they're terrible. And it's like Jack Nicholson in The Shining writing the I have to write it. So that's kind of one way that I force myself into it. I usually find if you just start, right, that's the hardest part is
Absolutely.
That start. You usually pick up a little momentum and can psych yourself into it.
Do you give yourself rewards when you gamify something?
I do. I try to. Sometimes it's a break or I'm really thinking today, my break might be going and getting a massage because this morning I was all frazzled and I was like, why am I making this so difficult? I need to get out of my office for a while. I've done enough already this week to where that's justified. So yeah, I think that's important. for sure, to have some kind of thing where you feel rewarded, or you at least celebrate your accomplishments. One of my first business coaches ever told me to keep an evidence list and a testimonial list on my desktop. So anytime, because sometimes it gets discouraging, but then it always seems like right when I get discouraged, I'll get a comment on a YouTube video or a direct message on Twitter that says, hey, I've been watching you for a year. You helped me land a $25,000 freelance gig. And I'm like, oh, okay, I got to keep going. Right. So I keep all that stuff on my desktop for when I'm feeling unmotivated, and sort of use that to push me back into the creation zone.
That's a great idea. I have similar ideas, but I don't have them as organized and easily accessible on my desktop. So I'm going to have to use that one, because I have the evidence list, or I call it a sunshine folder.
Yes, that's awesome.
Same idea. And I actually started it when I was teaching, and one of the veteran teachers is like, you're going to need this for bad days.
Yes. And boy, were they right.
Yeah. So it seems like we have a ton in common.
Yeah.
You mentioned you have a fiance. Are you in the wedding planning stage, or are you engaged and that will happen at some point?
Well, I have to be honest. We've been together for 8 years. He proposed last summer. Our families are like, enough. Like, come on. I don't know why. It's just like, it's never been like a thing that either one of us like really pushed. I was actually I was surprised when he proposed, because I had never made a big deal about it. Like, I've known other women that were like, you have a deadline, like you have 2 years or I'm out if you're not committed. And that just it wasn't me. So
right.
We did have a date. We had everything worked out. And then the Navy came to us and said, you have 48 hours to decide whether you're going to stay in North Carolina and for him to be deployed for 18 months or move to Indiana. And I was like, oh, we're moving to Indiana. Like that's an obvious. But then all of a sudden I had to drive there and see if I could find us housing, and like the move just threw like a wrench in everything. So he's actually the one that he's like, we're going to get this plan. Don't worry, Laura, it's going to happen. We're going to work this out. We're going to find the money to make it happen. It's going to be a really small ceremony. We're hoping to do it in the fall. I hope we can stick to that. He's 39. So he's like, I want to get married before I'm 40. So his birthday's in November. So let's hope we can meet that deadline.
So you got a deadline. That should help.
Yeah, that should help, yes.
Well, I hope it goes smoothly for you. When do you move to Indiana?
I move in 3 weeks, and then he's going to follow about a month later.
Okay. Wow. That sounds like that would be stressful.
Yeah, it's a little chaotic right now, but this is move number 5 for us. I feel like every time we do it, we get a little bit better. So he was reminding me yesterday, he's like, Laura, we're in so much of a better position than we were the last time we moved. Don't worry. We got this, and it's going to work out. But yeah, I was supposed to be moving in 7 weeks with him. And then he's like, oh yeah, someone needs to go there and set up all the electric and take the cats. So I was like, oh, I'm moving in 3 weeks and I have nothing packed. Awesome. So that's where I'm at now.
We have friends that are in the military, or the husband is one of my fiance's former teammates from basketball. And it's amazing how quickly they can unpack and get settled, because they've done it so many times too. Like, they have a system now. So hopefully you'll be there pretty soon.
There's definitely a system. Yeah. Last weekend was phase 1, which is purge and get rid of anything you don't need. So we did that trip to the dump and giveaway. And so that part's done. Now we're on to pack.
Did you do any selling on Craigslist?
I did not this time, but the last time we moved, I got rid of so much stuff and I sold a lot of things. And this time, it was more about like, we just had like all this trash. I'm like, why are we keeping this? We actually got rid of 1,600 pounds of trash alone. We just wiped. I said, we're starting fresh. Let's get rid of stuff. And if you haven't used it in 6 months, it's being given away or trashed.
That kind of made you sound a little like a hoarder.
I know. And I was like, he kept saying it on the way back from the dump. He's like, because we had a bet on how much it was going to be.
Okay.
And, and he was like, 1,600 pounds. How did we let that happen? And I was like, the last couple times we've moved, we've gotten so tired at the end that we just threw stuff in boxes and we never opened it. And then this time we uncovered it. We went through every box and everything in our house. And we were just very vigilant about this doesn't need to come with us. But yeah, it did. I was so embarrassed. And all the other people at the dump were looking at us. They all have pickup trucks. We've got the 25-foot U-Haul and we're so but I'm like, don't judge us.
Well, I'm glad you were able to share that on the podcast. Let's get more people in on this judgment.
Yeah, exactly. Go ahead, people, judge me.
What's the most embarrassing thing that's ever happened? No, I'm just kidding. Let's see what we can amplify.
We could, yeah.
All right. So I think you gave good advice just there with, take time to purge even if you're not moving so that you don't eventually have to drop off 1,600. You're almost to a ton there.
I know. I thought my bet was it was going to be more than a ton. So I'm just glad that it wasn't that bad. I was happy to be wrong.
Yeah, that's a good time to be wrong. What other advice do you have to share with anyone that's listening, whether it's about freelancing, starting your own business, writing, life in general? What words of wisdom can you drop on us here?
I would say, especially if you're going to own your own business, find clients that you like working with. One of my original business mentors said, do not recreate your job at home. She's like, don't set yourself up with clients who drive you crazy, where you're on the clock, where you're sitting at your computer all day. She said, that's what you hated about corporate America. Or even being a teacher where you were accessible all hours and, parents are texting you and administrators are emailing you at 9:00 at night. And I really took that to heart in my business and said, okay, I had a client and I still have him. He's my longest client. He's been working with me on retainer for 3 years. He's my ideal client avatar. So when I talk to somebody new, I'm comparing them against him in terms of not just the work offered, but the personality. Are you going to drive me crazy? Are you going to micromanage me? Or are we the right fit? And I feel like I feel so blessed because the clients that I work with are amazing and they're so easy to work with and provide such fulfilling work. And they make my life easy by paying their invoices on time and sending their 1099s on time. So all those little things, they matter. So you have a choice about who you work with. If you're going to work for yourself, be choosy. This is not just about who says yes to you. That is a two-way street. So be choosy about who you work with.
How long did it take you to develop that level of choosiness? Because I know for me, and I do a wide variety of things too, it took me a long time for me to divorce myself from feeling like every minute of my life needed to be spending somehow productively creating an income. And then B, at the very beginning, and like any opportunity to take some job, even if it's not something that I enjoy doing, I will, just because I felt pressure. How did you make that? Did you do that immediately and got that good advice, or was there a learning curve? How did that go?
Definitely a learning curve. For the first year, I took pretty much anything that was offered to me. And I learned a lot doing that. And I grew my business quickly because of that. But then I realized that I was working 40 to 50 hours a week. Some of that was being spent on projects I didn't like, people who weren't paying on time, and with people who were difficult to deal with. There's a saying that the clients paying you the least will always give you the most headaches. And I have found that to be true. Every time I have a problem with a headache, it's always like, oh, you're on the lowest. Like you've been locked in and, grandfathered into this lower price or something like that. And so I guess just the first time that I had a really bad client, I said, I'm not going to do this again. And it's kind of a lesson I've had to learn a couple of times over. I outsourced a lot of my business in 2015 to subcontracted writers, and I hated it. So at the end of that year, I fired all those clients. I let all the writers go, and I started completely over with just me being the sole writer. So there's another bold move. That one was scary because that actually happened because I submitted my info to my accountant and saw how much money I had actually made versus the company. And I was like, oh no, not again. We're not doing that again. Way too much work for far too little pay. So I fired half my clients. And and started over. And I was able to replace all that lost income in less than 3 months. So I felt like that was the universe's way of telling me, like, you made the right call. And I had better clients because of it too. So it definitely took a while. And don't beat yourself up if you're in the situation and, you're listening and you're thinking, oh, well, I have clients I don't love right now, but I need them. That's fine. Gamify it, figure out a way to replace that retainer or that contract size, and then fire the other one. Let them go.
I can definitely identify with a lot of what you said there. So I'm so glad that you've figured that out, and for your sanity and overall happiness are on the right track with that. So I noticed that you gave credit to Signs to the Universe. Are you into the law of attraction, or?
Yes, and reluctantly so. I kind of wasn't always like a woo-woo type person, but I didn't meditate or do any of that stuff, but it's become more and more a part of my life. When I started my business, anyone who said anything about mindset or manifesting, I was like, that's not real, but I was wrong. I'm happy to be wrong about that. And, I kind of believe that, like, you get out what you put back. So by filling my schedule with bad clients, right, that's all I was attracting is more bad clients. So there's definitely some shifts there that needed to happen with regard to beliefs and mindset. So it's definitely become more a part of my business, especially in the last year or so.
Okay, cool. So on that note, first of all, what made you a believer? And then, we'll just go with that first.
That's so tough. I was in a mastermind in 2015, and it wasn't the type of mastermind I thought I would ever join. I'd never joined one before, in fact, and it was extremely woo-woo. A lot. In fact, one of the women I still keep in touch with from that group is a shaman and like a dream priestess, and they do very spiritual woo-woo stuff. And here I am, like, I write for lawyers. Like, it's about like business, opposite.
Analytical, yeah.
But for whatever reason, I was in this group of women, and they were just amazing, like the things that they were doing and the goals that they were achieving. And I think that inspired me, quite a bit. And that kind of put me on that path. And, just so many people kept telling me, like, try meditation and try journaling and try these things. And I thought, all right, what do I have to lose by trying it? And now it's sort of become a part of my morning ritual. So I think that was just really being in the group with those women was really just inspiring and kind of encouraged me to tap into that a little more.
So what is your morning routine? How do you take care of your mindset?
Yeah. Well, I like to meditate every morning. I have like a favorite lady that does like guided meditations, and I love listening to those. I try to do my personal writing. So my writing on my fiction projects also happens in the morning when my brain is sharpest and before I can have any excuses. So like in the middle of the day, I'm likely to say, oh, I need to work on this client project, or I should do my dissertation. So I do that first. And then I feel super accomplished, right? Because I did that one thing that wasn't for making money purposes, at least.
Right.
I journal, and then I look at my schedule for sure. I kind of, that's my last minute chance to say, oh, something's popped up, or I need to leave the office this afternoon and do something like that. And that's also when I do my exercise. I walk and or run quite a bit every week, and that's been a really important part of my overall schedule, but I definitely kickstart that in the morning.
Very cool. And what is your meditation resource? I'll put it in the show notes in case anybody's looking.
Yeah, her name is Lisa Beachy, and she has just a ton of great meditations. She was actually recommended to me by somebody else, and I love her voice. And the meditations are like anywhere from 5 minutes to 45 minutes long. So if you're like me and sometimes you can't sit still for that long, then you can do one of the shorter ones.
Very cool. Do you have any book recommendations? Since you got the meditation recommendation, what would you recommend people read? I always love hearing this from writers too, because I feel like you have a special appreciation and more knowledge.
That's true. My favorite book that I've read this year by far is Deep Work by Cal Newport. It's amazing. It's kind of this idea of a lot of what we've talked about, the idea of batching tasks and doing focused work and kind of being unreachable a little bit. I mean, there's some people in the book. He's a professor, obviously an author, and he kind of talks about other people, even Bill Gates would go off the grid for an entire week. He's completely unreachable to have ideas and to be creative. And it's a really powerful book. He even advocates for quitting some social media platforms. And it's really eye-opening. And given that I was already doing Pomodoro Technique and turning off my email inbox except for a few times a day, I found that that book really resonated with me a lot.
That's really cool. It's funny timing because the structure of the show is, we have the interview comes out on Monday, and then on Friday there's a challenge from Monday's interviewee or from Monday's guest. And this past Friday's challenge is actually to do an EMF diet fast for 18 hours. So no screens whatsoever for 18 hours. And I haven't done it yet. And so there's a few challenges that I've just kind of been putting off. And I'm like, how am I going to do that?
Yeah.
But I know that there's value, just like a lot of people get their ideas in the shower. Like when you're not being bombarded with overstimulation, your brain can actually stop and rest and be creative. So it makes sense. Any other books you'd like to recommend or just that one?
I also love Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week because it started me off the delegation outsourcing path. I have 3 people on my virtual team right now that help me get a lot of things done. And kind of because of them, people are always like, how do you get all that done? And you write 50,000 words a week and you have 2 YouTubes and 2 podcasts. And I'm thinking like, I create that stuff, but my team does everything after that point. So I don't use the resources that Tim Ferriss talked about in that book, but his whole ideas of outsourcing and finding a VA and finding people to help you have been influential in my business for sure.
Absolutely. I can definitely agree with that. On a note, just a couple of beats back, you mentioned you have a couple YouTubes and podcasts. Where can we find you if we want to have more Laura in our lives?
I like that. My podcast is called Better Biz Academy, and it's on iTunes and Stitcher. And then my website for that also is betterbizacademy.com. And you can find, I think my channel is called Laura Pennington Freelance Freedom on YouTube. And like I said, we do 2 podcast episodes a week, and then I do 2 YouTube training videos. One's usually on some aspect of freelancing, and then the other one is usually time management, productivity, or outsourcing related.
Awesome. I love that. We'll definitely include all of that in the show notes. And then my last question for you, probably, unless more questions come from your answer for this one, but it's my favorite question to ask people, even before I had the podcast. I think it's just a great conversation starter. But if little 8-year-old Laura could look into a crystal ball at Laura today, on a scale of 1 to 11, how excited would little Laura be to see where you are now? Almost on your way to Indiana.
Oh boy, about that, she'd be like, really? I never went further than Indiana from Ohio. Okay. all the other things. I think off the charts with that, because when I was little, I wanted to be a writer. So it hasn't quite taken the path that I thought it would. But because I stumbled into this accidentally, I think it's pretty cool that something that I wanted to do, from when I was little has actually played out as a viable career option.
I absolutely love when I hear that, because I think it's just, there's so many instincts kids have that often get pushed away or pushed down. So it makes me happy when people get back to that authentic desire from their childhood.
Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to thank you for your time. It's been really fun chatting with you. I think that there's a lot of things that anyone looking to write or be a freelancer can take from this podcast. So I appreciate all the value that you add. And I've listened to your podcast and enjoyed that as well. So thank you for what you put out into the world. I hope you really enjoyed this episode of the Me Too Show. Just kidding. It sort of felt like that, but obviously everyone is unique and Laura is definitely included in that. But I love chatting with her. It was nice to find that I was not the only one in my situation, and hopefully you felt some parallels to your life as well. If you were listening and thinking, thinking, wow, my friend wants to be a freelance writer, or my friend is looking for a freelance lifestyle or to start his or her own business, please share this with them. You can either share it to one person specifically, or even better, you can share it to a ton of people on your social media following or through email or however you would like to. But the point is, I'm trying to reach as many people as possible with this podcast, and you sharing it helps me do that. I was super excited because in March, my goal was to get 500 downloads total on the podcast, and when I checked on April 1st, we reached 913, woo woo. So that was super exciting, but obviously you guys sharing out the podcast, especially the episodes that speak to you, makes a huge difference. Another thing that makes a huge difference is when you leave reviews for the Bold Moves podcast, because that tells iTunes or whatever platform you use to listen that you are enjoying it and that other people would enjoy it as well. So please go ahead and do that. It's not as hard as it sounds and only takes a couple seconds, and it's really appreciated by me. If you want to see more about Laura and check out her recommendations for books and for the meditations and the things that we chatted about, you can go to www.mandiem.com/episode61. That is where you will find the show notes. Don't forget to subscribe so that you can get the challenge on Friday and meet next week's fun and exciting Bold Move Maker. All right, as always, be bold and have a sparkly day. Bye-bye.